Forgotten hero of Rome? The shepherd who rose to emperor and saved a dying empire. From humble shepherd boy to ruler of an empire, it sounds like a fairy tale. But the story of Justinian I is no fiction. It's one of history's most remarkable tales of ascension, vision, and the salvation of a civilization on the brink of collapse. Welcome back to Echoes in Time. Today we're exploring the extraordinary life of a man who should be as famous as Caesar or Alexander, yet remains largely forgotten by popular history. This is the story of how a peasant from the Balkans rose to become emperor of Rome's eastern remnants, reclaimed lost territories, codified laws that still influence us today, and built one of the world's most magnificent structures, all while facing a devastating plague and a wife who was as controversial as she was influential. Our story begins around 482 CE in the village of Thrace, located in what is now North Macedonia. Born Petrus Sabatius, the future emperor began life as the son of a peasant farmer in one of the empire's most remote provinces. Little is known about his early years, but historical records confirm he spent his youth as a shepherd boy, tending flocks in the rugged Balkan highlands. His native language wasn't Greek or Latin, but likely a Thracian dialect spoken by the region's rural population. His life might have continued in anonymous poverty, if not for his uncle Justin, a man whose own story rivals his nephew's in unlikelihood. Justin had left their village decades earlier to seek opportunity in Constantinople. Starting as a simple soldier, Justin rose through military ranks through bravery and cunning. By the time Petrus reached adolescence, his uncle had become commander of the palace guard, a position of significant influence. Around 498 CE, Justin summoned his nephew to Constantinople, adopted him, and provided him with the finest education available in the empire. The shepherd boy learned Latin, Greek, law, history, and theology. He took a new name, adding Justinian in honor of his adoptive father. To understand the magnitude of Justinian's achievements, we must understand what he inherited. By the 6th century, the Western Roman Empire had fallen to Germanic invasions. Rome itself had been sacked multiple times. The once mighty Mediterranean Empire was reduced to its eastern half, centered on Constantinople. Even this Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, was in dire straits. Its treasury was depleted from constant warfare with the Persian Empire. Its provinces in Syria, Egypt, and North Africa faced separatist movements. Religious conflicts between Orthodox Christians, monophysites, and lingering paganism threatened internal stability. The empire's population had declined dramatically. Its armies were increasingly composed of mercenaries rather than citizens. Trade networks had collapsed. Urban centers were shrinking. Many believed they were witnessing the final death throes of Roman civilization. When Emperor Anastasius died in 518 CE without an heir, the imperial succession fell into chaos. Competing factions backed different candidates, with civil war looming. In this vacuum, Justin, now commander of the palace guard, maneuvered himself onto the throne. Though illiterate and nearly 70 years old, Justin secured the backing of the army and the Orthodox Church, becoming Emperor Justin I. For 8 years, Justin ruled nominally, but it was his nephew Justinian who increasingly managed imperial affairs from behind the scenes. Justinian's intelligence, education, and administrative skill made him the empire's de facto ruler. Upon Justin's death in 527 CE, Justinian ascended the throne officially. The shepherd boy from the Balkans had become emperor of the Romans. No account of Justinian would be complete without mentioning his remarkable wife, Theodora, perhaps history's most unlikely empress. Born to a bear trainer at the Hippodrome, Theodora began life in Constantinople's entertainment underworld. After her father's death, she became an actress, a profession synonymous with prostitution in Byzantine society. Historical sources, particularly the secret histories of Procopius, describe her early life in scandalous terms that cannot be fully repeated in this format. Yet Theodora possessed extraordinary intelligence and ambition. After a religious conversion, she reinvented herself and caught the attention of Justinian. Despite laws forbidding senators from marrying actresses, Justinian had the law changed and married her in 525 CE. When Justinian became emperor, Theodora ruled alongside him as a true partner, not just a consort. Her influence on legislation, especially laws protecting women's rights, was substantial. And as we'll see, at one critical moment, her courage would save both Justinian's throne and possibly the empire itself. Justinian's reign nearly ended before his grand plans could begin. In January 532 CE, what began as sports rivalry between the Blues and Greens, chariot racing factions, erupted into the worst civil unrest Constantinople had ever seen. For 5 days, rioters controlled the streets, burning much of the city center. The mob, unified under the cry of "Nika, victory," demanded Justinian dismiss unpopular officials. Soon, their demands escalated to calling for Justinian's removal, with senators secretly supporting the uprising. With half the city in flames and the mob closing in on the palace, most of Justinian's advisors urged him to flee. In this moment of crisis, it was Theodora who changed history with a single speech. According to Procopius, she declared, "Those who have worn the crown should never survive its loss. If you wish to save yourself, Emperor, that is easily done. But consider that after you have fled, you will not wish you had died rather than live. As for me, I agree with the ancient saying, the royal purple is the noblest shroud." Her words steeled Justinian's resolve. Instead of fleeing, he ordered his trusted generals Belisarius and Mundus to crush the rebellion. In the resulting massacre at the Hippodrome, an estimated 30,000 rioters were killed. The opposition was annihilated, and Justinian's authority was never seriously challenged again. With his rule secured, Justinian embarked on one of history's most ambitious programs of imperial restoration. His vision was nothing less than reclaiming the lost western provinces and restoring the Mediterranean as a Roman lake. In 533 CE, he dispatched his brilliant general Belisarius to North Africa with a relatively small force of 15,000 men. Against all odds, Belisarius defeated the much larger Vandal kingdom and reclaimed the wealthy province of Africa, Rome's breadbasket, after nearly a century of Germanic rule. Emboldened by this success, Justinian ordered the reconquest of Italy itself. Beginning in 535 CE, Byzantine forces fought a grueling 20-year campaign against the Ostrogothic kingdom. By 554 CE, Italy was once again under Roman control. Parts of southern Spain were subsequently reclaimed as well. At its height, Justinian's reconquered territories encompassed nearly the entire Mediterranean coastline, the first time since the empire's fall that these regions were unified under Constantinople. Even as his armies campaigned abroad, Justinian launched an equally ambitious building program. Throughout the empire, he constructed or renovated hundreds of churches, bridges, aqueducts, and fortifications. His crowning achievement was the Hagia Sophia, still standing today in Istanbul. When completed in 537 CE, its massive dome seemed to float unsupported, leading many to believe its construction was divinely inspired. Upon seeing the completed cathedral, Justinian reportedly exclaimed, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee!" The Hagia Sophia remained the world's largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years and stands as perhaps the greatest architectural achievement of late antiquity. Perhaps Justinian's most enduring legacy was neither conquest nor construction, but codification. Roman law had developed haphazardly over a millennium, resulting in contradictions, redundancies, and confusion. Justinian appointed the Juris Tribonian to lead a commission that would organize, streamline, and preserve Roman legal tradition. The result was the Corpus Juris Civilis, the most comprehensive and systematic legal code the world had yet seen. This massive work preserved Roman legal principles that might otherwise have been lost. When rediscovered in medieval Italy, it formed the foundation of civil law systems, now used by most of continental Europe and much of the world. Concepts we take for granted, the presumption of innocence, the burden of proof, legal equality, owe much to Justinian's code. In 541 CE, at the height of Justinian's reconquest, disaster struck. A mysterious disease erupted in Egypt and spread rapidly throughout the Mediterranean. The plague of Justinian, likely the first recorded outbreak of bubonic plague, killed an estimated 25 to 50 million people, up to half the population of the known world. Constantinople lost 10,000 people daily at the plague's peak. The empire's tax base collapsed. Army recruitment became impossible. Trade networks disintegrated. The reconquest of the West stalled as resources vanished. Justinian himself contracted the disease, but was among the few who recovered. Though physically weakened, his determination never faltered. Despite diminished resources, he continued building projects, legal reforms, and military campaigns, albeit at a reduced scale. Justinian died in 565 CE at the age of 83, having ruled for 38 years. Almost immediately, his overextended empire began to contract. Within a few years of his death, the Lombards invaded Italy, seizing much of the territory so painfully reconquered. By the end of the century, his empire had shrunk considerably. Some historians view Justinian's reconquest as an overreach that ultimately weakened the Byzantine Empire. Others see it as a heroic last flowering of classical Roman civilization before the Middle Ages. What cannot be disputed is that Justinian, through sheer will and vision, temporarily reversed what seemed to be the inevitable decline of Roman civilization. He preserved classical learning, architecture, and legal traditions that might otherwise have been lost. The Byzantine Empire he reinvigorated would stand for another 900 years, serving as a bulwark protecting Europe from Eastern invasions and preserving classical knowledge until the Renaissance. The shepherd boy from the Balkans had indeed saved a dying empire, if only for a time. Justinian's life reminds us that history is not predetermined. Empires don't simply rise and fall according to impersonal forces. They are shaped by human decisions, visions, and will. From his humble origins to his grand achievements, Justinian embodied the Roman virtue of gravitas, seriousness of purpose. Despite plague, rebellion, and constant warfare, he never abandoned his vision of a restored Roman world. Though much of what he built was ultimately lost, his legacy endures in our legal systems, in architectural principles pioneered by his builders, and in the very idea that civilization can be renewed through human effort, even in its darkest hours. If you found Justinian's remarkable rise from shepherd to emperor as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to Echoes in Time for more forgotten stories that shaped our world. What do you think about Justinian's attempt to reconquer the Western Roman Empire? Was it a heroic last stand of classical civilization or a costly overreach that weakened the Byzantine state? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until then, this is Echoes in Time, where the past speaks to the present.